Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Dragic at UH Extension Agent. I'm working today with Edmar and Max in the back. So Edmar is from HIOSH and Max is from Pesticides branch at DAB. For some reason, you guys renamed your name. It's not HDOA anymore. Anyways, Edmar is going to present today on HIOSH law with all the things surrounding around pesticide use, which is why Max and I are involved in this. Thank you, Edmar, very much for being willing to do this and collaborating on this. And yeah, I think take it away.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so for those of you who just walked in, this is the top 10 most serious cited standards that the Hawaii Occupational Safety and Health has cited for the fiscal year 2024. That means from October 1st to the end of September. Take a note, majority is electrical issues. And by the way, we didn't really disseminate or discern specific industries. This is all industries, and I'll cover what industries we specifically cover. And you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint as electronic PDFs sent by either Mark Dragic or Maxwell Bendis. And again, this is protecting Hawaii's workforce, a very brief regulatory view on HIOSH compliance and cooperation. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay, cool, because my voice gets hoarse after presenting so much. You guys did. Housekeeping. So in case of a fire, please check in with the organizer to account for personnel in the event of an emergency. If the alarm is sounded, please exit the building at the nearest exit. Meet us at this gravel, literally outside the parking lot. Restrooms are available on the side of this building after exiting right. Cell phones, laptops, devices, please put it on silence. But if you need to take a call because of your workplace, please take it outside. Restricted areas. Any other rooms except this room and restrooms are prohibited. Please do not go to the crop garden because I think there's pesticides. I don't want to expose the pesticides, okay? Personal items are your responsibility. Smoking. Please don't do it inside the building. Please, is there an area designated, Mark?
Actually, it's all tobacco free, so you gotta go outside the site.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Refreshments. Please bring your own drinking refreshments, but we'll try to keep it in under 2 hours to respect your time. Okay. Okay. And I do want to present this. So this is provided under the authority of 396-4C as in Charlie of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, which authorizes the Hawaii Occupational Safety and Health Division, otherwise known as HIOSH, to disseminate educational information to employers, employees, and the general public. Through lectures, exhibitions, and other forms of public awareness and outreach, HIOSH aims to raise awareness about the causes and prevention of workplace accidents and injuries. So to get a copy, again, just coordinate with Mark and Maxwell. I'm your host, Emma Costello. I'm the HIOSH Compliance Assistant Specialist. My role involves sharing the general information with our community members regarding HIOSH law while collaborating with the community to elevate the safety industry. I've joined the agency since 2015. I've served as a compliance safety and health officer where I audited local businesses and local and state governments, as well as served as a whistleblower investigator, safeguarding employees' rights to voice concerns about the workplace safety. I'll discuss more about that in a little bit. This presentation is for educational purposes only. For full obligations and employers' rights and responsibilities, refer to our website, labor.hawaii.gov/HIOSH. I'm going to cover a lot within the 2 hours or so. Bless you. 1, purpose and background of occupational safety and health. 2, the difference between HIOSH law and the Hawaii pesticides law, in which Maxwell will also correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a pesticide user. 3 is the compliance side of HIOSH, covering both the safety and health on brief topics of safety and health standards, and the whistleblower protections afforded to employees' rights and responsibilities. 4 is the Appropriations Act of the limitations and exemptions stated by Congress. 5, the cooperative programs, the other arm of HIOSH, not the compliance side, but the cooperative programs, and 6, the available resources we have to help employers. First, purpose and background of occupational safety and health. We all have a responsibility, and that means working together to prevent workplace injuries and illnesses through shared commitments to safety and health and respect in every workplace. And the reason for that is simply workplace safety laws in the US and Hawaii as well developed over more than a century of industrial disasters and catastrophes and reforms, culminating in the creation of OSHA in 1970s and HIOSH in 1972 to help promote and enforce safer working conditions. Key catastrophes defined as 3 or more employees that resulted in inpatient hospitalization, and as well as fatalities, growing public health concerns and efforts. Progressive legislation at both the state and federal levels drove the evolution of these protections all the way to the further right. Orange is noted as the catastrophes and fatalities that have been in history. It took us a while to get here to have a really good, or I guess, evolving worker protections. And in 1959, I just want to add that Hawaii became a state. This for my own history buff information. But workplace injuries and illnesses don't just affect employees, they hit you guys, the businesses hard too. When someone gets hurt on a job, it often leads to lost work days, reduced productivity, higher insurance premiums, and even sometimes lawsuits privately or government fines. And in serious cases, it can damage your reputation as a business set in this small island of Oahu, because we all know each other, or lead to the loss of federal contracts if you're going for federal contracts, like on a construction job. That's why Congress created the HIOSH Act, and by extension, Hawaii legislators created HIOSH law to help prevent these kinds of disruptions before they happen. You're going to hear the same theme, prevention. That's what we are concerned with. We want you guys to prevent the workplace injuries at your workplace. And the goal isn't just to enforce rules for the sake of rules, it's to protect people, keep businesses running smoothly, and maintain a level playing field. After all, a safe workplace overall means fewer accidents, lower costs, and more consistent operations, and ultimately stronger business outcomes. There we go. Now, there's 2 sides here. One is federal OSHA. They have jurisdiction everywhere nationwide, but here in Hawaii, they only have jurisdiction on federal agencies and federal properties. Here in HIOSH, as a state government, we don't have jurisdiction on federal properties and federal agencies. If we try to go past a military toll booth, they'll just shoo us away because they don't recognize our authority. That's really the main summarized difference between us and them in terms of jurisdiction. Our safety and health regulations mirror the 2017 version of the federal OSHA regulations. Just keep that in mind, the 2017 regulations. And where they have about more than 20 anti-retaliation statutes protecting people's rights to speak up about unsafe workplaces and whatnot, we only have 1 anti-retaliation. Other jurisdiction that we have here in HIOSH, we're only here in Hawaii, by the way, is we have jurisdiction on private businesses on non-federal lands, as well as city and county and state agencies, like that, for instance. Our mission of the HIOSH law, which also mirrors the federal, is to assure as far as possible every working man and women in the state safe and healthful working conditions. But our goal, our ultimate goal, is to prevent the first accident from ever occurring. So this is the foundation of the law itself. The purpose is to prevent harm before it occurs. That's why HIOSH is not required to wait for an injury or a tragic incident to issue a citation. In fact, HIOSH does not even need to show that someone was physically hurt at all in order to hold the employer accountable. The law is designed to address unsafe conditions as soon as they are identified, because waiting for an injury defeats the very purpose and nature of workplace safety regulations. Okay. And I could say a lot of things that where employers face a lot of significant challenges when trying to comply with HIOSH laws, like market pressures, economic shifts, labor shortages, and even unpredictable job site conditions. But these difficulties can be traced back to just three main issues: ignorance, ineptitude, and incompetence. And I apologize, I know these seems kind of harsh, but they do reflect a real common barriers to effective compliance that ultimately affects worker safety. Ignorance refers to a lack of knowledge about the laws, standards, and responsibilities required by HIOSH. Most times I hear, oh, I didn't know that was against the rules. Well, unfortunately, for many employers, especially in the small or newly established businesses, just being unaware of regulations that apply to their industry or specific work activities. They don't know that certain practices are unsafe, or they may be unaware about the specific rules that exist. And because of this can lead to unintentional violations and missed opportunities to always create a safer workplace. Because ignorance is not always willful, but it can stem from like limited access to training. Hey, by the way, I'm on the education side, so I'm trying to give this to the community. There has never been a CAS or community outreach in my position for the past decade or so. So I'm trying to reach out to you guys. Okay. Or guidance, particularly in remote or underserved rural communities. However, ignorance of the law is not a legitimate defense. So if, regardless of the cause, employers are still legally obligated to be informed and take reasonable steps to protect their workers. Second is ineptitude. Involves of having some level of knowledge, but failing to apply it consistently or at all. For instance, like issuing the wrong type of PPE when the SDS or the safety data sheet says you need this specifically. That's going to be example of ineptitude. You're trying your best, but you still need to get up there based on the manufacturer's specifications. And finally, incompetence. It reflects a deeper inability to fulfill legal and ethical responsibilities, even when knowledge and resources are available. And this could be like failing to correct concerns, employee concerns, known hazards, or neglecting to train supervisors adequately. And incompetence may arise from a culture that does not value safety as a whole, or from individuals in leadership roles who lack skills, qualifications, or motivations to just enforce overall compliance. And at this time, this can create environments where risk is just normalized and violations become routine. And please keep in mind, there are certain HIOSH regulations that specifically requires a competent person. A competent person defined by HIOSH is one that is designated by the employer based on their training, based on their credentials, whatnot, to be the guy to find the issues in the workplace and fix them. If you don't fix them, even though you know better, we'll go high on our civil penalties, and I'll discuss what that penalties look like. So standards that require specifically a competent person are very niche hazards, like fall hazards, falling off a rooftop, excavation hazards, being buried alive. That's not good. That requires a competent person to abate all hazards concerning that. Those are just few of the many examples of regulations that require a competent person. Now I'm gonna quiz you all just because I want to see if you guys are listening. Starting with the guy with the awesome hat. What is the goal of HIOSH law? A, to prevent the first accident. B, to provide a safe and healthful working conditions. C, to lower disability compensation payments. Or D, to eliminate medical expenses. Select one answer. Try your best, by the way.
A.
A, you are correct. To prevent the first accident. Number one, or two, which does HIOSH have jurisdiction? Starting with the guy with that. A, church with W-2 staff. B, private hospital on non-federal land. C, contract workers in United States Postal Service operations. Or D, State of Hawaii Department of Health. Check all that applies. I heard A, B, and D. You are correct because we don't have jurisdiction on USPS. Federal OSHA does. Number three, gentleman with the other hat and glasses. I like your glasses, by the way. Select one answer. What statute is HIOSH law? A, 29 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 1910. B, Section 1260 of the Hawaii Administrative Rules. C, 396 Hawaii Revised Statutes. Or D, 29 United States Code, Chapter 15.
C.
C, you are correct because that's Hawaii specific and it has S, which is statutes. Nice job. You and the gentleman in a nice shirt. Employers can argue if they are unaware of workplace safety laws if HIOSH cites them in order to avoid a citation. Select one answer, true or false. False. You are correct because ignorance is never a legitimate defense. If you bring that up in court, they will dismiss it because it's always your responsibility as a boss and as a role model for all employees to provide a safe workplace to do your due diligence. Okay, awesome. Number 5, I said this verbally. Catastrophe is the inpatient hospitalization of 3 or more employees from work-related incident and exposures. Oh, sorry. True or false? I got excited.
Yeah, I don't know about this.
Sorry, miss. It's okay. It's early in the morning.
Is that true?
You are correct. In our field operations manual, this is our SOPs, our standard operating procedures as HIOSH enforcement officers. We need to know the definition of what constitutes as catastrophes when 3 or more employees receive inpatient hospitalization for a work-related incident at the workplace. Okay, awesome. Being compliant with Hawaii's workers' compensation law satisfies HIOSH law. True or false? False, because I didn't talk about like workers' compensation. Their laws are very different than ours. So if you try to comply with workers' compensation law, you don't necessarily meet our specific HIOSH law. In January, I'll be teaching about record keeping. What's the difference between the WC1 forms and all that versus HIOSH record keeping? Yep, and both laws are different and reportable on how they record injuries and illnesses. All right, that was awesome. So the difference between HIOSH law and Hawaii pesticides law. I'm not an expert in all things pesticide and pesticides related law, but I do have Maxwell over there in the back to correct me if I'm wrong, right? Also to provide context. So on a federal level, these are the federal agencies and their respective mission. EPA versus OSHA, whose their mission is to protect human health and the environment. So the general public and the environment, to put it simply. This includes pesticides as the image depicts. OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and their mission is to assure workers, not public health, but workers, that they're provided a safe and healthful workplace. In other words, employee safety. Here is the comparison between the two federal laws and their regulations. EPA's laws is under 7 United States Code, section 136 to 136Y, also known as the FIFRA. I think you guys are familiar with that more than I am. And its federal regulations counterpart is 40 Code of Federal Regulations, subpart E, pesticides program, detailing label requirements, worker protection standards, certification of pesticide applicators, whereas OSHA, our federal counterpart, ours is under 29 United States Code, Chapter 15 of the HIOSH Act, federal regulations, 29 CFR subpart B, regulations covering record keeping and reporting, general industry, construction, and agriculture. I'll talk more about the OSHA part in a little bit. Now, on a state level, Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity, the pesticide branch, their law is found under section 149A, Hawaii Revised Statutes, also known as Hawaii Pesticides Law, with their regulations being section 4-66 of the Hawaii Administrative Rules. Their purpose also reflects similar to EPA, where to ensure that when applied as instructed, pesticides will not generally cause unreasonable risk to human health or environment. I have a lot of answer. So again, human health and environments, their scope of their agency dictates over what they do, what they require over all agriculture employees and pesticide handlers. For us on the state level, where I'm from, our law is under section 396, Hawaii Revised Statutes, also known as HIOSH law. Our regulations is not, well, including but not limited to section 12-60 of the Hawaii Administrative Rules, also known as general industries. That's what we cover, 12-60 general industries. Section 12.110 of the Hawaii Administrative Rules that covers construction industries. Section 12.208 of the Hawaii Administrative Rules that covers agriculture. And the purpose is to assure every working man and woman in the state a safe and healthful workplace, like I said earlier. And the scope of our agency is all workers, unless specified, because we're considered a broad agency. If there are specific rules, specific laws that dictate a very specific niche topic, like pesticides, then we do not cover that. Does that make sense? We're very broad. You go with the specifics of that agency, and then we're just the last resort. Make sense? Okay. Now, EPA and OSHA have their own definitions of what is considered agriculture. EPA defines agricultural settings as farm, forest, nursery, and greenhouse, all found under 40 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 170. For us, as OSHA, we define agriculture using the North American Industry Classification System, otherwise known as NAICS. Before I move on, do we know what NAICS means? No. Okay, I'll explain more in a little bit. But where they define agriculture based on these four settings, we define it on these hierarchy coding systems set by the Census Bureau, Federal Census Bureau. And I'll talk about that. So knowing your NAICS code helps to determine your OSHA and HIOSH compliance requirements, such as annual electronic reporting or record keeping. For more information on how to determine your NAICS code based on the industry you fall under, you scan this QR code and it'll lead you to the federal website. Note that this is not everything listed. I couldn't fit all the NAICS code values on this PowerPoint, but this is just something for you that I can pick out. For government agencies, you guys normally are under, the first two digits is like 92 or something. That's government, public sector. Everyone else is within their own numerical values. So when you scan this QR code, it'll lead you to this website, North American Industry Classification. Use the search feature on the webpage by entering a keyword that best describes your business. So, for example, I think someone here is conservation. You type in conservation and it'll populate choices that you can discern what is most applicable to you. It'll give you the assigned value. Last but not least, any comparison between our civil penalties versus DAB civil penalties. Theirs is up to $10,000 per offense for registrants, commercial applicator, and the like, as well as up to $5,000 per offense for private applicator are not mentioned above. Our agency, our civil penalties will cite up to $16,550 per serious violations. Same goes for OTS violation, meaning it will not result into a death or serious injury. Up to $165,000 and like for willful or repeat violations. Up to the same amounts for posting violations, $16,000. Up to $16,000 for every day not abated for the max of 30 days. So if we keep coming back to your establishment and you still did not fix the issue, we'll take the original amount, $16,000, and multiply it for how many days you did not fix it. Okay, so multiplication. And finally, our annual increase in, our civil penalties will annually increase every year due to inflation, just to match the federal level. So we're very expensive. We're giving you off. Okay, yeah, you. What best describes HIOSH scope? Specific, broad, unlimited, or powerful? I guess. What's it help out?
Like, look, we got two long friends in the back.
B as in broad? That is correct. We're very broad in terms of who we cover. When there is specific niche topic and specific hazards, like the pesticide branch covering pesticide labels, refer to them. Can't refer to us because they have specific jurisdiction. How does HIOSH define agriculture? NAICS, any kind, farm work, or the Federal Register. Guy with the cool shades. Hey, you got it. Next code. Next, HIOSH penalties do not change. True or false?
False.
False. You are correct. It increases every year to match inflation based on our statute mirroring the Federal Civil Penalties Inflation Adjustment Act annual adjustments for 2025 every year. How should a company select its NAICS code? Wait for OSHA to assign them a NAICS code. B, by using the code that generates the lowest insurance premium. C, by matching the code to its primary economic activity at the establishment. Whew, that's a mouthful. Or D, by copying the NAICS code from a competitor. Oh, no, please don't wait for us to assign you guys a NAICS code. This is self-assigned. So by matching the code to your primary business activity at the establishment, we don't assign you the NAICS code. You guys who are expert in your industry self-assign. Except for government, you're almost always under 92. Okay, good try, guys. All right, moving on to the compliance side. If you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. We saw how much it costs to not be compliant with our laws. If you guys got money floating around, okay, cool, but you're still endangering our communities. There are many occupational safety and health standards, but they can be best summarized under one or two ways: specific duty standards versus general duty standards. For specific duty standards, we have, again, areas of authority. General industries, that covers restaurant, hospitals, hotels, even farm as well, or not farm, sorry. What's that other? I think you guys call it structural pesticide stuff. Yeah, at the job site. Second is agriculture. So we already know how we define as agriculture. Third is construction. For the Hawaii Administrative Rules, you can scan this QR code. This will show you the bare minimum that employers are required to comply with our rules and regulations. They're the bare minimum. Safety and health rules include but not limited to fire safety, forklift operation, power equipment tools, hazardous chemical usage and storage, and all the like. So we cover a broad category of hazards in the workforce for such a broad industries. And we incorporate the 2017 version of the OSHA rules. We do have some Hawaii-specific rules that you will not see anywhere else in other states, as well as federal OSHA, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. Starting with hazardous chemical. So in comparison to EPA and DAB, they look at specifically what the label says and what the label requires, right? Training, PPE, and further on to accompany what the label is the SDS, otherwise known as considered labeling under the EPA. For us, when it concerns with hazardous chemicals, we typically look at, do you have written SOPs? Because we love SOPs. We love it when employers take the initiative to write the specific procedures and best how to protect their own employees in their own industry. Second is the label. Third is the safety data sheets. And fourth is the training covering a broad area of hazards, emergency procedures, and PPE. Note that when it concerns the label part, we cannot enforce pesticides, anything related to pesticides, because guess what? A specific agency already covers that. Yes or yes? Okay, cool. And I'll talk about what is written hazard communication program. So the purpose of this is to ensure compliance is conducted in a systematic way and well coordinated. We don't like employers to just make up things on the spot, especially when their employees' lives are in their hands. Please don't be lucky. Just be consistent and have written SOPs. Actionable items that you can take as an employer for your business is how you will comply with the labels and other warnings, how you, the company, will comply with the safety data sheets, and how you will comply with effective employee information and training, as well as maintain a list of hazardous chemicals in the workplace, making sure that every hazardous chemical is accounted for and is compiled in a list at your establishment. Labels. The purpose of this is to provide a brief synopsis of the hazards of the chemical. Actionable items you can do to ensure that you are compliant with HIOSH rules and regulations is that you gotta have pictograms, signal words, hazards, precautionary statements, product identifier, and if you're a chemical manufacturer or importer, I don't think we make chemicals here, as far as I know, or other party identification with US address and telephone number, just because in the event that, I don't know, the product that you bought and the label get defaced, well, you as the employer can just put up your own label based on the requirements of what HIOSH and OSHA establishes. Okay. Safety data sheets. The purpose of this is to provide comprehensive technical information and is a reference document for exposed workers and for first responders, because ambulances, firefighters, in the event of an emergency, they don't know every chemical in the world. There's so many chemicals that comes into Hawaii. They're not experts on what your chemical is, and they don't know how to treat them. But hey, guess what? The safety data sheets has a first aid section. Boom, give it to them. So actionable items you can do as an employer is have SDS for hazardous chemicals that you guys use. You can store it physically or electronically, depending on how you store it. When you store electronically, there's some barriers we have to be aware of, like if there's power outage, can employees retrieve the information fast kind? If requires like a online portal, how can you ensure that employees don't forget their password to retrieve it? Things like that. You gotta really knock down the barriers for them to easily access it, to make it easily accessible and available. You can also discard old SDSs if you're not using a product, only if you have a record of what was used, what chemical was used, where it was used, and when it was used. So you can discard old SDS. Okay, as long as you, yes, hi.
You said you can discard them. Keep a record of what's used them for.
Of what you would use, where it was used, and when it was used, and you can keep that record for 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah, because
I'm retired.
there are some illnesses, like, I'm just gonna throw it out there, like asbestos. The silica, they take like 20 to 30 years for the symptoms to manifest. Other chemicals, not just those two, takes 20 to 30 years. Yeah, hi.
Sorry, how long did you say you have to keep that record?
Oh, yes, 30 years.
Sorry.
Is it too small? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Is that as a hard copy?
Oh, no,
How we
whatever
have
you
for
want.
records, okay? Is it just like medical records you gotta keep, or digital's fine?
Oh, you keep it however, we don't prohibit you. Again, you just gotta factor in the barriers. Yeah, as long as you have an answer and that you're deliberate in how you knock down the barriers, then we're fine. Yeah, awesome questions. I love the engagement. Hazardous chemical training. So the purpose of this is to ensure workers understand info from the safety data sheets, labels, and your written SOPs, procedures to follow. Make sure that you teach employees based on the language that they are fluent in. So if they're Chinese workers and they don't speak a lick of English, then find someone that can teach them in their own language that they're comfortable with. Things like that. Actionable items you can teach your employees. Hi, yes.
So I just want to jump in really quickly on that language access point. If you have employees who don't speak English and you need help with translation services for your pesticide specific trainings, pesticide branch can supply those services for you. Translation services can be very expensive, but we exist to help you out. So if you need help translating into Korean, Thai, Ilocano, Tagalog, or Chinese, we can help you out. Thank you, Edmar.
Shoots. Actionable items you can do to teach your employees under this is teaching the standard, the HASCOM standard, which you can see a reference point here in the bottom. I know it's kind of small, but you'll get the electronic version anyways. The standard operations in their work area where hazardous chemicals exist, because they need to know what are the hazardous chemicals that might spill, might break, and how should they respond. Location and availability of SOPs and the list of chemicals and the SDSs. Methods to detect the presence or release of hazardous chemicals, specific hazards associated in their usage, and preventative measures and emergency procedures like gloves, PPE, whatever PPE you need, getting whatever this SDS stated, like usually almost always get a spill kit. And finally, your employer-specific SOP program. Yes,
So a non-management position, they need to know how to determine what a SBS, what it's saying.
for workers subordinates, yes.
Okay.
Because the reference document is for them as well as for employers. Because employees have the right to understand. It used to be the right to know, but I think back then, employers would just say, here's the SDS, you figure it out. But it's important on the employer, who is the role model of their communities, of their employees, to take the initiative and teach them how to use information. Okay,
Thank you.
right on. So I'm very techy, and I designed this program where if you want to play a game, you can go scan this QR code. It will lead you to the high tools where you can just learn how to use the pictograms or identify the pictograms and what the hazards are associated with. So just have fun with that. Okay, this is not training. This is just awareness. Yeah, and the pictograms were created back in 2012 under the United Nations. Again, United Nations also felt like, oh, we get chemicals from all over the world, but the safety data sheets from different countries, the pictograms, they're all different. Why don't we standardize it? And so United Nations said, let's standardize it. Let's find a way to communicate up to our workers better. And so the OSHA loves that idea. We adopted that regulation. And so we adopted the 2012 globally harmonized systems to comply with all things chemicals incoming to United States. Next is respiratory protection for a non-agricultural setting. Okay, for a non-agricultural setting, DAB requires fit testing, training, medical evaluation, and 2-year retention of the above of what I just said, and care and cleaning. For us, however, we require typically all of these: written respiratory protection program, where you designate a qualified program administrator to deal with the SOPs, the medical evaluation, where you got to retain, instead of 2 years, it's the duration of employees' employment with you, plus 30 years to factor in the latency period. The exception to this is if they're only going to work there for less than a year, you can just give the record of the medical evaluation back to them. That way they have their own copy. Okay. Fit testing, training, cleaning and maintenance, program evaluation, like conducting annual retraining of your employees who use respirators, as well as conducting annual fit testing, which I'll discuss more on this in a little bit. The ones I mark as asterisk: medical evaluation, fit testing, training, cleaning and maintenance. They're not applicable. We don't deal with the respirator use for pesticides because we have an agreement with DAB. If we find this in the field, we'll just give the case over to DAB. Make sense? Because that's very specific on pesticide use. If you're using respirator in a non-agricultural setting for non-pesticides, then that's our jurisdiction. Make sense? Awesome. But in the agricultural setting, we don't have jurisdiction. We just give it all freely to DAB to deal with. Know the difference. Okay? Okay. So I said this written respiratory protection program, the purpose of this, having SOPs. Yes, hi.
I have a question. From the last slide, can you repeat that? This is based on the whose definition of agriculture? Because your guys' definition of agriculture and then the DAB's definition of agriculture is different, right? You use in North America, whatever.
Yeah.
Naga. What's the thing?
Stakes.
Nix, yeah, sorry. Use Nix, right? And then DAB uses a different definition. So like how differentiate that, I guess. Is there other
In an agricultural setting, based on your NAICS code, yes. It's just when they created the regulations, OSHA and EPA had a meeting and be like, yo, we thought we were gonna add respiratory protection standard for agricultural settings, but they haven't taught me BPA and they're just gonna cover that section. So for us, it really is based on NICS code. That's all. And I'll show you in a little bit on the Appropriations Act on what is the exemptions and limitations that Congress, how do I say this? Places on OSHA and HIOSH activities, including agriculture settings.
I think that helps. So you're gonna enforce based on the next code and then they're gonna enforce based on.
There.
Okay.
Cool. But this particular standard, the regulation 29 Code of Federal Regulation 1910.134, we just cannot enforce in agricultural settings. It specifically tells us not to do that. We can do it in construction, hospitals, all that, but specifically agricultural settings. Okay, good question. Where was that? SOP is required for written respiratory protection. For you to assess and document information important to respiratory hazards posted to your employees during both the normal operating conditions and during reasonable foreseeable emergencies. Actionable items you can take to do this is have a worksite specific procedures for the selection of respirators, medical evaluations, fit testing procedures, especially for tight fitting respirators, proper use of respirators in both the routine and emergency situations, cleaning, disinfecting, storing, inspecting, all that. Ensure adequate air quantity and quality and the flow of breathing air for atmosphere supplying respirators, training, and regularly evaluating programs to ensure that there are no deficiencies. So that's all required by the written SOPs of your respiratory protection program. For medical evaluation, the purpose of that is to determine the employee's ability to use a respirator before fit testing and use, because we don't want to put respirators on employees and we haven't fully checked out, do you have any pre-existing health conditions I gotta be aware of? Because already wearing a respirator is taxing. But if I don't know that you have pre-existing health conditions and I put that respirator on you, I'm sentenced you to like more punishment. The things that you can do as a company is you gotta pay for a medical evaluation if you require a respirator. You as a company also gotta find a doctor or a practitioner that is within their field of area, where the doctor themselves, they'll administer a medical questionnaire. This is a short excerpt of what a medical questionnaire will ask, like shortness of breath, coughing, all that. And if there's any red flags based in a questionnaire, the doctor will follow up with the employee to conduct a follow-up examination. It's like, what do you mean when you say this? For you as a company, you also got to give the doctor a copy of your company's written procedures and the standard. That way they understand your specific requirements and the regulations that entail. Some doctors honestly don't know our regulations that well. That's where you got to feed it to them. Okay. Third is company get written recommendation that from the doctor that the employee did pass the medical evaluation and they are approved to use respirator for you folks. And finally, another actionable area is company obtains access to written recommendation. You can't obtain medical questionnaire because it's a medical record, and that's considered confidential. So please, management, don't try to obtain medical evaluation records. Okay. Okay. Fit testing. The purpose of fit testing is to verify a respirator fits properly and seals against the face and to detect any potential leaks that compromise protection. Actionable items that you guys can take is conducting initial and annual fit tests and changes. And whenever there's noticeable changes of the employee's physical conditions, I gain weight and sometimes that could affect the overall fit protection factor. I was the HIOSH respirator administrator for our agency, so I fit tested our employees. And there's some employees that had to fail because, yeah, they gained weight. So we got to issue them, maybe go one up on a respiratory size to fit them, to give them the proper seal. Other notes is like, what do you call it? They had extreme dental changes and that affects the proper seal of the respirator. So I had to fail them in one aspect, but they could pass on another fit testing procedures, which I'll explain a little bit on what that looks like. And as the respiratory administrator, you gotta keep record of people you fit test and you pass and fail, such as the names of those you tested, the type of fit test you perform, quantitative or qualitative. I'll discuss more in a little bit. The specific make, model, style, and size of respirator, like is it 3M, is it Drag, I already forgot the brands out there that exist. All those kinds of things. You gotta notate it, what you specifically tested them for, the date of the exam, and the pass and fail results. And just a side note, when we compare fit testing qualitative and quantitative, qualitative fit test, the acceptable protocols that OSHA deems that is good for the industry is conducting, what is this, the banana sweet test, the isoaminoacetate, or the saccharin, Bitrix, and irritant smoke. Quick question, how many of you guys wear respirators for your work? Okay, and I guess you guys are familiar with the qualitative part? Okay, for those who, they got money in the splurge, you can also conduct quantitative fit tests. And these are the 4 areas of protocols that we approve of. And they look like this. Or qualitative fit test is just the smell test. See if your employees under a specific procedure can smell it based on how many pumps they do. For the quantitative fit test, it's the machine that decides for you. And I operate the machine better than the qualitative fit test because honestly, it's a lot of trust with employees. Like, yo, do you sense it or not? Please don't lie to me. Okay. Not to mention, I can go through so many employees through the quantitative fit test because it's just so fast. It takes like 5 minutes. And it's just a series of exercises where they wear the respirator, hook up the respirator to the machine, and the machine will provide airflow and detect, hey, I think some of the air is escaping, or there's more air that's introduced into the circuit, usually because someone sneezed during the protocols. And so if that ever happens, I have to fail them and maybe retake it again. But that is what an example of the quantitative fit test looks like. And there's pros and cons for each fit testing. One is more expensive than the other, but the other one is more efficient and so forth. Plus, this quantitative fit test machine requires annual calibration. There's no one that is designated to calibrate on the islands. So we just gotta send it up to the mainland for calibration to ensure that we get the proper empirical data. Respiratory protection training. So the purpose of this is, again, to ensure that the workers understand their rights and responsibilities to effectively use respirator to protect themselves. After all, the respirator is already harmful. They gotta know how to identify hazards related to the respiratory so that they don't further endanger themselves. So actionable items you can take as an employer is conduct initial, annual, and as needed training on these following topics: why the respirator is necessary and how improper fit, use, or maintenance can compromise the protective effect of the respirator, limitations and capabilities of the user, use in emergency situations, how to inspect, put on, all that, procedures for maintenance and storage, the recognition of medical signs and symptoms that may limit or prevent effective use, and finally, general requirements of the standards. So training is indeed important for our workers. Another tool I devised for employers in our community out there is using the HIOSH, the HI tools, how to determine what are requirements for respirators. So you can go through this quick checklist of questions to determine if you need respirators for your non-pesticide usage. Okay, scan this QR code. Field sanitation in a general industry setting where DAB requires pesticide decontamination facilities and supplies, soap, single-use towels, and clean change of clothing. We, however, in a general industry setting, require employers to provide potable water for drinking, to provide toilets for this specific ratio and more as the number of employees increases, and separate toilets for men and women, unless there's single-use occupancy toilets that are lockable, just to protect privacy of other users. The exemption to providing all these toilets is if they are mobile crews, meaning they can just drive away and go to the nearest McDonald's or something if their restrooms are there. Provide washing facilities, soap, provide hot, cold, or tepid running water, provide hand towels, air blowers. And if required by the standards of HIOSH, provide showers, 1 shower for every 10 employees of each sex, soap and clean towels, hot and cold water. And so that's for the general industry type setting. And for agricultural setting where DAB's regulations have not changed, but for us, the only changes here is just providing toilets. The number increased to 20 instead of 15. The exception to all of this is for employees who do field work in an agricultural setting. If you do it for less than 3 hours in a workday, then you get to just go home or go elsewhere, go back to the base yard and use the toilets there. I want to add, because I'm always forgetful on this, that per my colleagues over there, they informed me that the symptoms of pesticides is the same symptoms as heat stress. So if you're out there working all day, whatever, exposed to the heat stress and heat exhausted, how do you deduce which is which? Is it heat stress or is it symptoms of pesticide poisoning? One way to eliminate or deduce it is to provide cool drinking water, provide them shade, and hopefully they're acclimatized to the conditions. And if you provided all that, we can deduce it's probably not heat stress. It's more likely pesticide poisoning. Okay. Okay.
They don't get better?
Assuming if they don't get better.
No, like, how would you deduce it? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Okay. So heat stress and pesticide poisoning, according to my colleagues, the symptoms are the same. So what is it? The central, so dizziness and whatnot? Nausea?
Yeah, I mean, the symptoms, so if they're exhibiting both symptoms, which is for both, how would you deduce it's poisoning?
But
When you make them cool,
yeah, cool them down, drink cool water.
so they'll get better, but if they don't, then
It's likely
Oh, yeah, sorry.
pesticide poisoning. Yes.
So the point is that we don't let ourselves get to the point of being heat stressed. So when we do start feeling gross, when we're working with pesticides, we know that it's pesticides and not heat. Because if both are happening to us at once, then we can't separate the two. And then because when you're heat stressed, what you do, you go sit in the shade and drink some water. When you are experiencing pesticide poisoning, you go to the hospital. They're very different responses. So that's why we need to be very mindful of our heat exposure so that we can not be heat stressed at work, so we can rule that out entirely from the equation.
Right on. Thank you.
Can I also interject here for a moment? For like those of you that work in agriculture, the WPS requirements for soap, like water and stuff like that for workers to have with us, they're very similar things that are required by HIOSH for the field sanitation. So in this, I think it's the same area in your agricultural setting that you need to have it. I believe it's quarter mile for both. Correct me if I'm wrong. Best thing, easiest thing is just have a bunch of water in one place for like hand washing and decon and stuff, soap and single use towels. I mean, they're both the same requirements on both sides. Just saying, it's easier if you have them all in the same place. But be aware that if you're working in an agricultural setting with pesticides, you have to have that anyways. Yeah, all right.
I've just been given an alert. So we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break to give you guys some chance to relax, to use the restroom or whatnot. Okay? All right, 10:06. Come back at 10:11.
sorry, guys.
Yeah,
That didn't make sense to me. But in my mind, anyways, it's exactly what I.
I just, my brain's not.
But I'm supposed to tell, because the books have the same system, so when they read, you know, they get better, they, you know, it's not pesticide, but really, yeah, that point is, you don't even want to because even, I've been stressed, I say it's less. It just go back.
I was thinking about.
In the meantime, it was really pesticide. I might be like 50, but as I see. Just not herbicide. So, yeah, it's not.
I mean, that's
pesticide.
That's a foundation.
On the fly, but it's good to learn, like, your stuff is. Yeah. That's not a fair thing, I just. I'm gonna see you, you're like, what the heck?
Yeah, like, I
That's a big one.
When I come to your leadership, someone else reading on the that's not fish keeping. Oh, yeah.
We have pieces for that. That's not a lot to do.
You know, this is a very small.
Right.
You know what? I'm like,
Yeah.
Sure.
That's where. Even if you're. Yeah. It's transferable. This knowledge. And I.
No, so, like, there's.
Because there's so much.
But.
This is again, this is just. It's not moving that.
Just upgrade.
So when we decide on. It's much clearer. What everyone can know.
Yeah, definitely. There's. Yes. Yeah, I'll have the blast.
for, the meeting.
Yeah, I think you, I think.
Yeah.
It's not.
I don't know.
I know, that's, I was like, that's sure. I wanted to get that.
Yep.
That's my free question.
Yeah, she sent out, follow-up email this morning. So, you mentioned you were gonna be monitoring on Friday, is that this week? Yeah. Busy all day Thursday.
Yeah. Water, that's what it was, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna spend like probably 30 minutes. Guys. Alright, then. Generally free on the day.
Yeah, that's right. So does that mean when you guys don't have?
Oh, I got it.
I guess I'm done, so I guess it's.
This weekend
There's like a gate.
So like our contracts are right there, it's our contracts. So we have to listen to that. Why don't we just maintain vegetation?
But I'm just curious,
Is that like, is something working as a project? Are you guys part of the investigation? Because that may go through. Or if there is.
And then there's the research right now, spawning like all our. They're very specific. The AC is and the number of projects. Alright, so we'll.
I say the contractors. Then you come in.
Yeah, on Thursday.
Getting more of those successful.
Yeah, and that's. The meeting beginning.
I'm talking.
Because I'm sitting on a lot of information.
Yeah.
2 hours. All right, let's resume.
I will make sure I.
So I finished talking about specific duty standards required for employers to meet. Now I'm going to talk about the catch-all, also known as the general duty clause. This is the general duty clause for HIOSH, the catch-all standard for standards that are not specified in the specific duty standards.
Sorry.
Again, it's the catch-all. This is the Hawaii version. It's this wall of text right here. And I'm just going to break it down for you based by comparing HIOSH and OSHA's general duty standards. If you're just walking in, this is the general duty standards. It's the catch-all for very specific hazards that's not been addressed by our specific duty standards. In comparison to HIOSH general duty standards on the right, Federal OSHA's general duty standards is on the left. They're one sentence, but they don't focus on a very specific important area, which is abatement, how to fix these hazards. Otherwise, we address employers how to fix the hazards. And in fact, it mirrors, if you read from 2 to 4, it mirrors the NIOSH hierarchy of controls, the National Standards, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, where we look at top down the most effective ways of controlling the issues down to the least effective. Elimination, physically remove the hazard. I'm going to use COVID, for example. I know everyone has their own sensitive topic about COVID, but just bear with me because the way they showcase COVID controls is essentially hierarchy of controls. So elimination example of COVID is you work from home. You can't claim you got COVID at work because you were at home. That's physically removing you from the hazard. That's an example of elimination control. Second is substitution. I can't use COVID for that, but you can substitute a more hazardous chemical down to a less hazardous, from formaldehyde that causes cancer to formalin that I don't think causes cancer, but is still considered hazardous. Engineering controls, isolate people from the hazard. That's an example of that for use of COVID is putting barriers, putting curtains between you and your coworkers. That's an example. Administrative controls, changing the way people work. So for example, what is that called? Social distancing. Yo, coworker, go 6 feet away from me. That's an example of changing the way people work. Another example I can give for administrative controls is to manage heat stress. Instead of working from like 8 till 5, where the sun is already out, some construction companies work at nighttime from maybe 2 in the morning till plus 8 hours. Therefore, you can't claim heat stress because you're not under the sun. And finally, the least effective. And then when I say least effective, I don't mean it's junk, that PPE is junk. I'm just saying after exhausting all controls, PPE is the last resort to protect the workers with personal protective equipment. That could be your gloves or hard hat or whatever the situation calls for. So that is the specific duty standards and the general duty standards. How do we enforce the standards is we conduct inspections based on priority. It makes sense that the top priority that we focus our resources on is imminent danger. People are about, or workers are about to die. Not they will die, they are about to die, and we rush out. Second is fatality and catastrophe. People die. We get notified either by an employer or the medical examiner, depending on the situation, and we rush out to investigate what could it have done to prevent that. Complaints, employee confidential complaints filed to us at the HIOSH agency. We also rush out for that. Referrals from other agencies like medical examiners. When people die, they call us, especially if there's presuming a work-related incident, or the firefighters, or DAB as well. Media, if we see it on the news, employees died, we'll rush out as well. Hey, yo, employer, how come you did not contact us? COSHO, even officers of the agency will initiate an inspection if they see plain view issues like that, using just your eyes. And finally, employer reported, where I'll talk about that in a little bit. There's some requirements where the employer is supposed to notify us for death or other serious conditions. And finally, the lowest priority is called the program plan inspections. This is a list of companies or companies within a particular industries that we will go out to enforce. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Once we do the inspection, the first process of an inspection is present our credentials. Please do not get us mixed up with police, with ICE, with anything else. We're just auditors of your company. We're going to ask for your SOPs and everything else. Second is the open conference, where we open with the highest ranking management official of your establishment to explain why we're here, what we plan to do. Third is the walk around. Someone will escort us around the facility. It could be you, the higher ranking management official, or your delegated official, whichever is available to escort us around the premises. We'll be requesting documents, conduct private employee interviews, collect samples and monitor, and do some photographs or videos of evidence of non-compliance. And finally, we'll conduct a closing conference where we summarize our inspection results with you, with the high-ranking management official, whoever's invited. If you don't get cited by us, congrats. But if you do get cited, this is again what our civil penalty looks like. All these. Okay. This is what I mentioned earlier, where the responsibilities of an employer is to report certain work-related incidences. For more information about reporting, record keeping, and annual electronic submission to federal OSHA to scan this QR code for more information. But so far, right now, you need to know about the reporting requirements is report to us if there's been a fatality due to a work-related incident within 8 hours. And 24 hours if there's been an inpatient hospitalization, amputation, loss of an eye, or property damage in excess of $25,000 or more, usually because of a fire. These are examples of what triggers an inspection on the lowest priority, meaning you're on the list. So these are 3 examples. One is the building permit. We have research statisticians that compiles a list of building permits on the construction side, and we get those building permits to then go out and fly out to neighbor islands to do inspections. So construction. Second is site-specific targeting system. These are non-construction workplaces with 20 or more employees. We target those based on the annual electronic submission of the employer's OSHA Form 300A. I'll talk more about this in my record-keeping class in January, if you sign up for it. But the things we target based on the data you electronically submit to federal OSHA is high DART rates, meaning like shortly injury, workplace injury, illness rates. Trending upward DART rates, low DART rates, and if you're wondering why low DART rates, that's just for quality control, making sure you are up to date.
What is DART again?
Oh, days away restricted and like it out. Transfer. So that's your workplace injury and illness rates. Yeah, right on. I love that engagement. And finally, you did not electronically submit every year like you were supposed to. So these are the areas that we look at, or the reasons why we're there under the SST list. Finally, the third list is the National Emphasis Program. And as a national scale, federal OSHA and their respective state plan counterparts, HIOSH, for example, we will conduct inspections if you are typically dealing with fall hazards, warehouse and distribution center operations, excavation and trenching, combustible dust, amputation, lead, the process safety management covered chemical facilities, meaning if you have a huge chemical vat and there's a potential for leaks and you're not detecting the leaks, like I said, for hazardous chemicals, then that's an issue. Respirable crystalline silica, heat stress, hexavalent chromium, and primary metal industries. So those are the 3 lists that we compiled of companies or their industries that we're going to target. And it's the lowest tier. What you can do on your end to be more proactive is conduct a safety and health management systems. So this is creating a safety-based culture among your workplace where safety is not just a priority, it's a core value. Because, priority changes based on the need, but a value is consistent no matter what. Yeah. So I'm not going to explain more in deeply per item, but it always starts when we're creating a safety culture. It always starts at the top, management, leadership. If your management is breaking the rules, chances are, as a role model, your employees will follow suit. Worker participation, getting feedback from your employees, hazard identification and assessment, hazard prevention and control. We talked about prevention and control, the general duty standards, and just reading our rules. Education and training. The difference between education and training is education is a broad explanation of many different categories. Training is I specifically condition you to think and act a certain way. This is not considered training. This is education, just like DOE. They taught you guys English, math, and whatnot. But after you graduate high school, it's hard for me to retain that. Program evaluation improvement, ensuring that you look for any deficiencies, audit your own SOPs, whatnot. And communication and coordination to employers, contractors, and staffing agencies. Because even if they're not considered your employees, they're someone else, it's still your responsibility based on so many factors, in which I'll teach in that HIOSH class. Okay. Where federal OSHA does not require employers to meet these elements, generally speaking. We do, however, under the Hawaii administrative rules. These are the corresponding administrative rules associated with each element. So if you're wondering why is Hawaii so strict, because this is our community, we know everyone here. Yeah. Question time. I think we left out with her, so you. HIOSH adopted what version of the OSHA regulations? 1888, 2016, 2017, or 1972? Try your best.
C.
C. That is correct. On fire. SHIMS, otherwise known as Safety and Health Management System, is important to employers because it provides, check all that applies, structure, safety conscious culture, proactive approach, reduction in injuries. I'll go with you.
B.
Close. It's all that applies. They're all positive things. Good try, though. Good try. It's only in the morning, I get it. HIOSH can't cite a restaurant for lack of label on a pesticide bottle. In a brown shirt. True or false? Yeah, okay.
False.
False. You are correct because pesticide is already specifically addressed by DAB. So if you ever get inspected for unlabeled pesticide bottle, you just gotta show our boss the EPA approved label with a registrant number that it is indeed pesticide. And then the citations will get withdrawn. Okay? Okay. How long must agricultural employers keep medical evaluations for respirator use when using pesticides according to HIOSH? Duration of employment plus 30 years, as long as someone wears a respirator, 2 years, or no jurisdiction with the hat. A. Unfortunately, we don't have jurisdiction.
Catching us on that.
I tried it. Yeah. Orange. What are two duties an employer owes to their employees under HIOSH law? General duty clause, specific duty standards, performance-oriented standard, or duty of care. Check all that applies.
A and B.
A and B, you are correct. Performance-oriented standard, I just want to highlight this, is if we look at specific duty standards, you can subdivide it to what this regulation specifically requires. Like, for example, a fall hazard of more than 6 feet in construction requires a safety net, guardrails, or fall harness. Specifically on those three, no other misinterpretation, right? But performance-oriented standard is giving you flexibility. Hey, based on this generalized standard, what do you interpret and how do you want to protect your employees? That's performance-based, meaning it's giving you flexibility. You're the experts in that field. So you know how best to address the specific hazards in your industry. Duty of care is a negligence case. So sometimes businesses sue other businesses for breach of duty. That's not what we're here for. We're just here to focus on HIOSH stuff, okay? Why is going on the backseat? Why is PPE deemed the least effective, also known as last line of defense in controlling hazards? Relies on employee behavior and supervision. PPE is always more comfortable and cost effective than other control methods. PPE can be uncomfortable to wear and interfere with tasks. Or D, only protect the individual, doesn't remove or reduce the hazard. Check all that applies. D, unfortunately, it's A, C, and D is all correct because they're relying on human behaviors to wear the PPE like you told them to wear the specific PPE that you told them to tell you that if there's any issues with the PPE, wear and tear, hopefully they would tell you so that you can get another one, a new one. There's all these reliance on human behaviors that you have to just put in place, and it's kind of tiresome for some supervisors. Just keep that in mind. Employers must report work-related fatalities within blank to HIOSH, 8 hours, 48 hours, 24 hours, or 2 weeks.
A.
You are correct. Nice job. Next, employers must report work-related amputation within how many hours to HIOSH? 8 hours, 48 hours, 24 hours, or 2 days? Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually 24 hours. Yeah, good try though. To create a workplace safety culture per the SHIM, Safety and Health Management Systems, where does it start? Employee involvement, man in the mirror, education and training, or management leadership? You know the Michael Jackson Man in the Mirror? No? Yeah. Unfortunately, it's the management leadership. It always starts from the top. They are the role models for what they expect their employees to do. If they're breaking the rules, chances are the employees will think it's a lax culture and they will not comply with our regulations or company policies. Okay, Appropriations Act. So the Appropriations Act is legislation enacted by Congress that allocates funding for designated federal agencies like OSHA, which influences our operations down to HIOSH. This means Congress imposes certain restrictions on our agencies by limiting our inspection results. And there are two industries that they tell us to limit and exempt is farm industries and low hazard industries. And you already know about what's considered agricultural. I'm saying farm because agriculture is too tongue-tied for me. So just saying that. For farm industries, based on this table, our officers will determine if the employer is someone who is engaged in agriculture, farming industries, but does not or maybe maintains a temporary labor camp, so migrant workers. So if you are a farm with 10 or less employees and you have no migrant workers, meaning no temporary labor camp, we cannot inspect, we cannot investigate, we cannot do anything. I can't even do outreach. I can't do outreach. So if an employee dies for work-related incidents in this red box, we can't because Congress told us not to deal with that. Okay?
Then who does?
I can't answer who does which agency does that. Hey, you're telling me, man. Yeah, because, and I want to say, I forgot to leave out, HIOSH is 50% federally funded and 50% state funded. And the reason why Congress tells us what not to do is because we get federal funding, the 50% side. If Congress tells us not to do this, but we try to do it, they may pull our funding. And that's the consequences. Okay. Okay. But for temporary labor camps where it's active, we can inspect. Yeah, regardless of the applicant. If it's 11 or more employees. For low hazard industries, and there's so many NAICS code, what's considered low hazard industries that changes every year. You can scan this QR code for a list of low hazard industry based on NAICS code. But if your DART rates, your workplace injury rate, is below the all industry national average, and the national average changes every year. And if you have 10 or less employees, our co-shows cannot do safety inspections. And there's safety inspections and there's health inspections. One hazard kills you now, like forklift, struck by, things that can impale you, that kind of thing, fall hazards. For health inspections, that's like hearing loss, chemical related, asbestos related, all that, things that can kill you 30 years down the line. So in this category, they can't do the safety inspections, but we can do health inspections in that red box. If it's below the DART rate. Otherwise, we can just do whatever we want. Oh, not whatever we want, but whatever we can do. Okay. And that's just to recap in a nutshell. Quiz time. Where did we leave off? You finished? So, HIOSH is completely prohibited from inspecting all farms regardless of employees. True or false? All right. Is San Francisco? You are correct. We cannot inspect or investigate farms that have 10 or less and have not had any temporary labor camps within the past 12 months. Good job. If there's an employee fatality at a farm with 9 employees and inactive TLC, then they don't have to report to HIOSH of the fatality, like I mentioned. True or false? That is correct, because the appropriation Congress said that none of the funds appropriated under this paragraph shall be obligated or expend to prescribe, issue, administer, or enforce any standard rule, regulation, or order under the Act, which is applicable to any person who is engaged in farming operation, which does not maintain a temporary labor camp and employs 10 or fewer employees. I have to read that because I want you to know this is based on Congress. So it's out of my reach here. Okay. By the way, anyone here that fits that category, 10 or less and no temporary labor camps? No. Oh, okay. I guess really there's no reason for you to be here. That's the takeaway. Yeah. Now whistleblower protection. This is my favorite part. So generally, employees can be fired for any time, for any legal reason, or for no reason at all, based on the at-will employment doctrine in all 49 states except Montana. However, there are exceptions, which such as laws that protect against retaliation. The anti-retaliation protects employees from being punished for reporting safety issues or being part of this HIOSH safety or HIOSH inspection. And I might use the word discrimination or retaliation synonymously, but I do want to help you understand that we do not cover protected class. Protected class meaning age, sex, creed, and all that. We deal with protected activity, free speech, or variation of free speech. That's what we deal with. For anything protected activity, you call the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission. Or if you're on a federal property, the Hawaii Equal Employment Act. I forget. I'm sorry. Now, this is the difference between federal OSHA's whistleblower statutes and HIOSH whistleblower statutes. They have about 25 and more based on Congress statutes that they cover. We just have the one broad category if you're within jurisdiction of HIOSH. And I highlighted, what is that? 14, because it's comparable to our broad whistleblower statutes. And when I put the numbers here, 60 days versus their 30 days, 60 days and 30 days, that's indicating the number of days to report the whistleblower complaint to us after your latest adverse action. I'll talk about that more in a bit. But for in the quiz question, 60 days. By quiz, I mean my personal quiz, not the RUP quiz. But generally, employers must not retaliate against employees who, includes but limited to, not limited to, file a safety and health complaint with HIOSH, participate in the HIOSH inspection, reporting a work-related injury or illness, communicating about safety and health matters to management personnel, bosses. And two types are refusals: refusal to operate any unsafe machines, or refusal to engage in unsafe practices. Note that I put a asterisk in the refusal because to prove that they can successfully claim employee refusal, the employee themselves have to fulfill all these criteria. Has a reasonable apprehension that death or serious injury may occur if they are operating with this unsafe practice. They refuse in good faith and has no reasonable alternative. Has insufficient time to eliminate the condition through regulatory statutory enforcement channels like just contact us. Ask us to come out to inspect. And 5, where possible, sought from his or her employer and was unable to obtain a correction of the dangerous condition. And this is generally because when an employee brings up alleged unsafe issues to the bosses will generally just fix the issues when addressed. Is that right? We'll fix it, right? Yeah. We're not gonna blame them or just disregard their complaints. We're gonna address them, be proactive and all that. But what the employee cannot do when they're refusing you is that they cannot walk off the job. Because once they notify you of the issue that they have, you generally will fix it when you are notified. Secondly, the employee can still request an inspection by HIOSH if you guys still haven't fixed the issues. Therefore, what I tell all employees is please don't walk off the job because that could be seen as job abandonment and you can still be disciplined. These are a list of adverse actions. This is including but not limited to firing, demoting, denying overtime or promotion, disciplining, denying benefits, failing to hire or rehire, intimidation, threats, or harassment, reassignment to a less desirable condition, or reducing pay or hours. These are examples of adverse actions that you cannot do when someone is speaking up about unsafe work practices or being part of a HIOSH or refusing to engage in any unsafe practices. And this is the elements of retaliation when you line it up. One is employee engagement protected activity. This is what the employee has to establish to claim a retaliation case so that we can take on their case and investigate the employer. Second element is the employer knew or suspected that you guys engage in a protected activity. So in other words, it's not hard to deduce who complained what, especially if we're a small employer. Especially if you have 10 or less, especially if your employees have been very vocal in the past. So it's really not hard to deduce. And it's not hard to fulfill this second element. Third is the employer took an adverse action against the employee for speaking up. So that's your firing, your all that. And finally is the employee's protected activity motivated or contributed to the adverse action. Notice that in this element, it doesn't say it has to be the sole reason why I fired you. It can be contributed to. It can be one part of a whole of why I fired you. So that means it can be very muddy and gray. Yeah, all right. But even if they launch a separate investigation and they prove that you guys retaliated, this is the relief that we can provide for employees who felt retaliated. Rehiring, reinstatements with their back pay or restoration of seniority or other appropriate relief. And the other appropriate relief is generally reserved by judges based on the totality of the circumstances. So sometimes there's punitive damage, sometimes there's so much. But generally they'll come back to work at their establishment. I had some employers tell me like, all that just to get rehired at the place that allegedly retaliated. Yeah, because now they know how to protect themselves, both free speech and their job. And it's on you to always manage the hazards that they're going to speak up about. So you got to be on your A game. Okay. These are some proactive programs that you can take with you to manage the anti-retaliatory program. One, it always starts from the top, management and commitment. Lead by example and prevent retaliation and uphold your company policies on this. Second is compliance concern response system. And you can call this whatever you want. This is just a framework. But you can create a culture that values raising workplace safety concerns. This means addressing any concerns they have with empathy and fixing them. Anti-retaliation response system. This is developing an independent reporting channels for employees to report to if they have a concern. So like if I have an issue with, I don't know, boss A about retaliating me, am I gonna report my retaliation claim to that same boss? No, I'm gonna go to a different one. I hope you provide that independent channel for them, maybe HR, something like that. Anti-retaliation training all staff. That includes management and subordinates with the knowledge, skills, and tools that they need to recognize, report, and prevent retaliations, and as well as fix hazards. And finally, program oversight. So that's just auditing your SOPs to detect any deficiencies in your program. Okay, I'm running out of time. So I'm just gonna read right through this for you guys to create a safety and work culture per ARP, where it doesn't start at the very top, as always. A restaurant employee raised concerns about food safety to the employer on non-federal land and then was fired. Did we cover this? No, because it's under Food Safety and Modernization Act, filed with federal OSHA within 180 days of the latest adverse action. Under our statutes, how many days must a whistleblower complaint be filed out after the adverse action? 60 days. We give an additional 30 days because we know our guys here. It takes a while to file a complaint. Which of the following is not considered protected activity under HIOSH whistleblower protections? Age, because we don't deal with protected classes. Whistleblower can file anonymously with HIOSH. False. When you're trying to claim a complaint, you cannot file anonymously because, I mean, how are you going to get reinstated at your job if no one knows it was you? Yeah. An employee can successfully claim retaliation under our statutes if they were fired first and then filed a safety and health complaint with HIOSH. True or false? False, because the order of operations is the employee must speak up first. And then later down the line, get fired, not fired first and then speak up. That's not how it works. We get a lot of those. Cooperative programs. So this is the toolbox of resources that we can offer to employers to help go above and beyond. We have the Hawaii Voluntary Protection Program, which we literally award companies with exemplary safety and health management systems, meaning we can endorse them. Right now, we've only awarded in the past several decades, Monsanto and Bayer, one in Molokai, one in Maui, because they are the best at what they do. And the benefits of being awarded by us is you're not gonna be on our list of places to inspect. Okay, and I'd like to see you guys be awarded for this, because when you're awarded with this, that means we trust you. You're gonna look after your guys or women. You're gonna look after your staff. Okay. These are our guiding principles. These are our approval criteria. And guess what? It says SHIMS. So that's everything I just stated in that colorful stuff, right? And that's our bare minimum rules already. So if you can match that, I don't see why you could just be awarded for this. Next is the SHARP Improvement Safety and Health Achievement Recognition Program, otherwise known as SHARP. It's similar to Hawaii Volunteer Protection Program, except it's for small businesses. HVPP is for both public and private businesses. This is specifically for small businesses under a separate arm who administers this. None have been awarded, by the way. And I want to see more being awarded, because the benefits is you won't be on our list of inspection. This is their criteria for approval. And the ones who administers that is the consultation and training branch. You can contact them. They'll literally consult and train your employers, your management, all that for free, and it will be held confidential from the enforcement branch. So their training and I'm education. I cover broad areas. They cover specific and conditioning you guys to think a certain way. The Alliance program is a community-led program where we co-collaborate with other folks to educate our community. If you guys love teaching, please join me. And these are two areas where we try to tackle: training and education and outreach and communication. One is providing a forum. The other one is disseminating information, maybe because of an e-newsletter you have or whatnot. And available resources provided to you folks. I'm very techy, so I develop HIOSH to help employers navigate our many confusing rules and regulations. There's different HIOSH I develop. One is for record keeping, if you're required based on your specific NAICS code to electronically submit to us, or to keep record injury rates or whatever. Next is the field operations manual. It's our SOPs as officers. So if you have an officer on your establishment and you want to verify that they're by the book, then you too can read our procedures. Okay. Company search history. So you can search who have been inspected by HIOSH or OSHA federally or in Hawaii using this code, the webpage managed by federal OSHA. This entails all the violations that the company have been cited before in the past. And I think it goes up to 20 years in the past. And you can request a speaker, me, for your events. And that concludes my presentations, 10:50. And if you guys like what I presented or you think it could be improved, please fill out this anonymous survey so I can help improve this overall presentations. Thank you very much.